Welcome to today's student success video on reading at university. I'm Raquel Lado and I'm going to walk you through this process. So my job is a learning strategist and assistive technologist at Algoma U. I provide academic support to students. So this can take the form of one-on-one help. It could be a student success video. I also coordinate our peer tutoring program. If you want to meet with me, you can email me at learning@algomau.ca or raquel.lado@algomau.ca. And then we can meet either virtually or we can meet in my office and I can give you some help and some suggestions on how to improve the things you're doing and also maybe direct you to other resources that might be available to you. But today we're talking about reading. So what does reading at university entail? Well, it's a lot. You are going to spend a lot of your time reading. You're usually reading textbooks. Now, I've put here usually one per class. You might have some class that doesn't have any textbooks at all. It could just be assigned articles to read. So it really does depend on the professor, but sort of the standard is one textbook per class. But you could have those additional assigned journal articles. You're doing research. And basically, reading is going to take up hours of your time every week, but it is so worth it. To do this university thing right, to do well, you really do need to put in the time to get your reading done. So why do the reading? Well, it helps you understand the topic in the class lecture. It helps you with note-taking, which would be identifying the main idea, introducing you to new vocabulary. Because even though you're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint from your prof, you're not getting all of the extra information that is being said. And that is what you're doing to note take. It helps you with remembering information. In order to remember things, you need to be exposed to them in a lot of different ways and over multiple times. So the more that you're exposed to the information, the more apt you are to remember it. A textbook might present information in a different way than the professor, with different examples and so on. So you may find the textbook confusing and the professor's a lot better. Scheduling reading. So I did talk about a weekly schedule in my organization workshop. A weekly schedule is where you're assigning time to the different tasks you need to do as a student every week. And one of them should be reading. So it should be in your weekly reading schedule that you're putting in some blocks of time for reading for your classes. And it works better if it's relatively consistent from week to week so that you're developing a good routine and habit. When you're scheduling reading, feel free to break up a chapter into sections. I am not actually a big advocate of reading an entire textbook chapter. All right, so what's this reading strategy? Well, you only have time to read once, so you want to get the most out of it the first time. And really, the goal would be to create some condensed notes that you can use for studying later because you don't have time to go back and reread whole chapters. So reading needs to be an active process. So this means that you're actively engaged with what you're reading, you're interacting with the material, with the goal of being able to learn something and remember it. If you've read a whole chapter and you don't remember anything, you've really just wasted time. So active readers, of course they're reading, but they're also thinking about what they read. Do I understand that? How does it relate to this? Do I get that example? Oh, that reminds me of what the prof talked about in class, those types of things. They're looking for the key concepts. So maybe they're underlining them, highlighting. Annotating means making notes in your textbook. Anything to help do something to show those main ideas. They're also linking ideas. University is not about memorizing independent facts. It's often about synthesizing and putting ideas together and looking at the structure of things. So active students are creating a structure out of the topic and attempting to summarize in your own words. If you cannot summarize something in your own words, you do not understand it. So it's a really simple test to put yourself through. Active reading means understanding, learning, and remembering. So the goal is after I finish reading a chapter, which I've maybe broken down into 3 different sections throughout the day, I'm actually going to remember something that I read, I've learned something, and I understand it. Otherwise, like I said earlier, you're just wasting your time, and you don't have enough time for that. So what can I do to help me get the information I need? So I've tried to break this down into a formula, and it works most of the time, quite truthfully. We start with a what is something. What is classical conditioning from psychology? What is hegemonic masculinity from sociology? And so on. What is it? This is typically a definition, and in your textbook it might be in bold so that you can help figure out, what it is. But university is not about the what. It's not about you memorizing a definition. You need to understand it, and you need to have some details to support it. Details come from why and how questions. A why question and a how question are much more of an analysis type question, whereas a what question is simply a regurgitation question. I can memorize a definition, spit it back to you, and have no idea what it means. Here's an example from Introduction to Canadian Business, Admin 1016. Crown corporations. The question on the test might be, define a crown corporation and provide an example for 5 marks. So your answer would go something like this. You do start with the what. A crown corporation is a business owned by the government. So that's the simplest form of the definition. But I need to get more details, so I ask a why or how question. Well, why does the government own businesses? And then I answer that question. 1, to fulfill service that is not there, and so on and so forth. And then I provide an example that I explain. This is how I get 5 out of 5 on that answer. If I know that this is how a question might go, I'm going to bring that all the way back to when I'm doing my initial reading and thinking like a professor right from the get-go. So the big picture, reading a textbook. Most textbooks work in a way in which they are divided into main ideas within a chapter, and then each of those main ideas is divided down into subsections, and then there's points and details that follow it. So an example would be something like first year psychology, where there's a chapter on the concept of memory. So the whole chapter is about memory. The 3 main ideas within that might be long-term memory, short-term memory, and working memory. And then taking one of those, let's say long-term memory, some of the sub areas we're going to have are the parts of the brain involved. How do we use it? What purpose does it serve? And so on, and down into details. And then we'd have the same structure for short-term memory and the same structure for working memory. So that's generally. Now, if we take that to the next level and think like a professor, a big essay question, let's say worth 30 marks possibly, could be the whole chapter. So in psychology, it could be describe all 3 types of memory, including the parts of the brain that are responsible, the role it serves, and so on. And so now I have to put all of those ideas into one essay. The smaller essay questions are going to be at the next level. So I might have a smaller essay question just on working memory, for example. Short answer questions fall into that points, and then finally maybe multiple choice questions at the end. So when I'm reading, I want to pay attention to the structure of the chapter. How is it divided? And then how are those sections further divided? So that I can see the relationship between ideas and I can see the whole big picture. Now, sometimes you're going to have articles to read. You're going to do a lot of article reading in your own research, but you also might have them as part of your class reading. Typically, articles follow the same sort of structure, which is question, evidence, conclusion. The question is, what is the author trying to prove? And it's usually found at the end of the introduction. The rest of it is going to be the evidence. What details do they have to back up this claim? And finally, you have a conclusion in which it's a repetition of the question and a summarizing of the proof. So some of the critical thinking that goes along with articles is in the evidence section. Did the author do a good job at proving their point? And then you can sort of go from there to look at different levels of how you can analyze the article. Now, the big picture at university. I share this frequently in my student success workshops because I really want students to see how everything works together in order for you to be successful. So first, second, third, the green circles are the things that you do on your own time and you do not get a mark for. The orange circles, the assignments and your tests and exams, these are the things that you get a grade, and the grade is really based on what you did on your own time. I have them in order for a reason. The idea is you do your reading prior to going to class. So if the required reading is chapter 3, then you've had chapter 3 read before you go to class. And I talked about why that was important, right? It helps you with note taking. It helps you identify the main topics. It prepares you for class discussions. It introduces you to the vocabulary. The prof is not always just going to tell you what's already in the textbook. More work, less work, no, better work. Active reading does take time, and in fact, it takes more time than passive reading. But what it does is it reduces the amount of study time later. So passive reading means I read the whole chapter, I never made a note, I didn't really think about it, and I truthfully don't remember anything. So I put in time, but got nothing out of that time. Which means when I go to study, I have to start from scratch. And that takes up a lot of time. Students who commit to active reading every week for each class tend to have improved grades. There is a direct result that you can see because your studying is going to go a lot better. You're engaged in getting more out of class, and therefore the grades that you're getting are better. So it is worth it because it will ultimately make a difference. So thanks for tuning in. And remember, I'm always here to help. Contact me directly. You can email me. And just a reminder of the other academic supports we have in the Learning Center. There's obviously help from me, but I also coordinate our peer tutoring program. Every student can access 6 hours of free tutoring per course per semester. At the beginning of every semester, I send out an email to all students with all information about the tutoring program. And you can request a tutor through your student portal. And if you're interested in becoming a tutor because you've done well in your class and you would like to do that, you can also apply to be a tutor through your student portal. It's under resources and then student help and academic. We have a writing lab, which is another free service, so you can get help with your writing, and a math lab. Again, another free service, and you can get help with your math classes. So we have lots of help available to you. All that we need is for you just to come forward. And if you're not sure what help it is that you need, then I suggest meeting with me. We have a good chat about what's going on, and I can get you set up with the right resource for you or combination of resources. So I wish you the best with your reading, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Student Success video.